Doug Ford's got this like big shotgun. He's just standing there. He's like, "You're closing," or he doesn't do it like that. He says he cocks it first. He's like, "Okay, you're gonna be next," and then like a date, it's like. Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates. You're listening to the largest, fast-growing podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. I, as a broker and an investor, want to know what comes next in Toronto real estate for my portfolio and for my clients. And if you're listening to us, you probably do too. We're going to have some fun. I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend as we round into the new week. We got some important stuff we want to take care of, starting with, will rent prices continue to go down? What's the trajectory of rental rates? Where are they going? Whether you're an investor, whether you're a tenant, you're going to want to know this, but we're not going to stop the story there, because if you're kind of checking through your news feed, that's probably mostly what you're going to see. And that's why we're going to cover it first. But there is a lot of gold nuggets here for you today. What would a land transfer tax holiday mean for Toronto or Ontario? This is a proposal being put forward by OREA. That's one of the topics I want to cover. But this article we're going to dissect is so juicy. It fits over two categories. It's the fattest topic we've had so far, because we're also going to talk about, from the same article, our OREA opportunity zones, as they call it, tax breaks, opportunity zones. Keyword, if you've probably never heard of it, that's okay. We're going to talk about what that means. Is it coming to our market? This is a suggestion that OREA had. I want to dissect all of these things. And again, as mentioned, we're having a wonderful weekend. On Friday, it was a beautiful day, and fortunately for us, we were able to take a day off, and we went to Limehouse Conservation Area. We went through this little thing called Hole in the Wall Caves, and honestly, I just felt so connected to my roots. We managed to climb down some steep rocks and ladders. Actually, we're shooting a video or a show or something there, and all this, we had babies. So I was holding like a 3-year-old, and my wife is holding a 4-month-old as we're climbing through this obstacle course, and there was actually a dude behind us, and he asked to take a picture. He's like, "Hey, can I take a picture? You guys are doing a great job." Probably to show his homie somewhere. I don't know. And he asked, he's like, "Have you rappelled before?" And I'm like, "Damn right. I've been rappelling people since I was born." But we're going to talk today about policy changes, specifically the ones being brought forward by OREA, the Ontario Real Estate Association, of which I am a member as a licensed realtor here in Ontario. And when it comes to some of their suggestions, it's got me wondering if we're entering a new era in Toronto real estate. Like that time that dude was like, "We need to talk," thought the caveman. You know what? I like to have some fun. We like to keep it light, kind of crack some jokes. And, you know, in the spirit of caves, I thought we would cave into some of those jokes. And that was a terrible one, but don't worry, we got some loaded ones for you today. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, leave us a comment, send us a message, whatever. Connect with us. It's beautiful hearing from you guys. It makes my day, and it makes every second of coordinating these podcasts worth it. Okay, so before we get into some of these policies, we're going to talk about condos. We're going to talk at length about condos, and I want to poke holes in some of the things that people are saying, because I want the message on what comes next for the condo space to be absolutely clear in your mind. Now, of course, RE/MAX, those pesky realtors, they're biased, and there's no more I don't think they expected guys like me to call them out on their biases. It sounds like a Greek god. So we're going to talk about what they have to say. Their point is right, but their stats are flawed in that they're not really painting the picture as it is. Here we go. This is what they say in their article entitled "Toronto Real Estate Rental Prices Continue to Go Down." Here are some of the trends in the Toronto condo market, which could explain why rental prices continue to trend downwards. Right out of the gate, they start talking about Q2 of 2019. By the end of the second quarter, there were 24.8% fewer apartment rentals on the market compared to Q2 2019. First, let's just pause for a second and appreciate the Q3 numbers for 2020, obviously for 2019, are already out. So why are we looking at Q2? And I think this is going to become more obvious as you hear some of the numbers. Don't worry, we got Q3 for you coming up next. But listen to this. According to TREB, in Q2, the average one-bedroom condo apartment rent was $2,083, down 5% from Q2 2019. And for any of you guys listening, you know, that's it. Like, isn't it more than that, Bradley? I've been listening to you for months talk about how that number is higher. You would be correct. And apparently RE/MAX is not selling that story. They say, meanwhile, the average 2-bedroom condo apartment was renting for $2,700, which is 5.6% decrease from the same quarter that previous year. Again, those numbers seem low. And you would be right. They've really taken the Q2 stats. I mean, we literally just got Urbanation's Q3 stats on rents, right? And all of a sudden we say, you know what, we're going to go with TREB. We're going to go for Q2. And they take the stats that don't paint the picture. If they're truly trying to tell you today, rent rates are coming down, there's a potential rate runs coming down, you'd think they would give you the numbers that show that dire prediction in play. But no. And I think this comes back to the roots of realtors. And unfortunately, it kind of speaks to the fact that it's always a sunny day in real estate. It's always good. But I think as investors, we need to be looking below the surface and we need to be more honest with things like this. So I want to give you some real stats that came from Q3. We did a podcast a few days back and we talked about the Urbanation report at length. If you missed it and you want to know about what rents are doing, definitely check it out. But here are some of the highlights of those stats. According to TREB as well, TREB talking about Q3. Again, the stats are available, even from TREB. So they say they reported 14,000 condo rentals during 2020. This is a 30.2% increase from the third quarter in 2019. Condos were rented. So we had an increase that condos were rented. But that doesn't mean things are better. As we're going to see, the rent rates are still coming down. When I jump over to, I believe this was a Blog TO article. It's called this, Looking to Rent in Toronto. Now is the time. Rents are down by more than 16% in some neighborhoods. Not 5, 16. It's funny what one quarter can do, huh? All right, well, I guess it doesn't go very far these days with inflation. Between last quarter and this one, the number of condominiums listed for rent in the GTA doubled. The number of listings doubled. Average annual rent reduced 9.4%, according to a report based on Urbanation. 9.4, not 5, 9.4. And that's not even the worst. That's just the average. Rents are down in some areas by more than 16%. We named a few back in our podcast a few days ago. East Bloor Village submarkets, U of T and Ryerson down 16.8. Downtown Core, 16%. Entertainment District down almost 16%. And City Place down over 14%. Even the purpose-built rental units had a vacancy rate that cleared 2.4, which is the first time it's passed 2% in a decade. So if RE/MAX was trying to paint the story of how difficult the rental market is, and the crazy thing here is this RE/MAX article is the top article. We look up Toronto real estate, it's number one, at least when I looked it up. But again, go back and listen to our Urbanation. We want more detail on the rent rates. I don't want to recover that again. But let's review several reasons why the rental prices are being pushed down in the Toronto market. It's like a caveman's fart. It's a blast from the past. Here we go. Here are some of the main things. Number one, condo supply has brought a lot of inventory back on the market. Number two, job loss during the pandemic could have reduced financial power for renters, causing many to stop searching. I'm going to put a little bit of a hole in that one a little bit down in this podcast. So remember that idea that because of employment issues, people aren't able to get in the market, and therefore that's affecting the rental market. You're going to actually hear a counter argument, which I think is more legitimate, shortly in this podcast. Restrictions on showing homes could have also halted renters from searching for an appropriate unit. So restrictions, less immigration, they say, has resulted in fewer new immigrants, by large numbers. And students have been spending less time in the city, which I believe, if I had to hedge a guess, would be the reason why we saw these numbers all of a sudden start taking off in the downward direction in September and October once again. So back to RE/MAX. Haha. Have you had enough yet? From here on out, they do pretty good. Okay, they do pretty good, but they do continue to talk about Q2. There's no reference to Q3 at all in this interview here that they had, or this document that they've published. I don't get it. But they say that the condo apartments on the market were up 42% granted over the past year in Q2. Yet condo owners are considering either turning their properties into long-term rentals or selling altogether. Listen to this. This could result in further supply in the coming years. Wrong. Okay. Listen to this. Listen to this thinking, guys, and tell me if I'm losing my mind. You guys make the call. I mean, I'm just going to tell you how I hear it, and I call BS. Listen to this. Condo owners are considering either turning their properties into long-term rentals or selling altogether, right? They're considering, so listen to the trend that's happening here, where being a landlord of a condo unit is difficult, and they say, therefore, it's going to further result in supply in the coming years. We're going to have more supply of rentals. In my mind, it's the exact opposite in the rental space, right? Would it not? If you sell that unit, So you're a small time investor, you have a condo, you're renting it out, and you're having so much difficulty finding a tenant. If you sell that, the only way that that's going to stay as something on our market as a rental unit is if it's picked up by another landlord. And we aren't seeing a ton of people racing to be condo landlords these days, if you get what I'm saying. This will result in less supply in the coming years. That's in my book. I believe on the tail end of all of this, people are going to be running for the hills. There's less reason to have a condo rental space than there is to have one. There's more reasons to get rid of it. Small landlords scared or turned off of renting their units will mean less supply when the demand, these things, right? Student rental, immigration, the ability to afford, if that in fact is an issue, all of these things are going to mean demand coming back, and we will be worse equipped or ill-equipped, which we were already pre-pandemic. Again, assuming everyone comes back to the city, which is obviously a limiting factor here as well. So BlogTO, they have this article talking about Airbnb. I thought I would touch on it. I thought it was a good point. Anytime I see something new, anytime I give me something to think about, I thought, you know what? I'm going to share that thought with my listeners so they can have that thought. Here we go. These numbers come after a summer in which the number of new listings shot up in downtown Toronto buildings that were notorious for Airbnb activity. Wait, Bradley, you're telling me the Airbnb units are going on the market for long-term rentals? Uh-huh. Despite the temporary 2-month ban on short-term rentals lifting on June 5th, a significantly slower tourism industry is forcing many short-term rental investors to consider recalibrating their income strategy to either seek long-term tenants, which sucks to do right now, or consider offloading their investment entirely. And if I could add to that conversation from the research that we've done and we've brought to you guys in our podcast, you guys know the beginning of January, you're going to need to register. In fact, you're already supposed to register your Airbnb units. And the classification of what is allowed for an Airbnb unit is not what you're thinking in your head, in that you're probably wondering, you know what, there's all these condo apartments. There's a condo unit that's just rented. He's got like 5 of them and he rents them on Airbnb. That's not going to be allowed. And so January 1st, we're going to see this influx. And these are all pressures on our condo space. And none of it should be new to you. But I find it ironic when I hear stats being under pushed. Like, this is a common theme. I think the media has picked this up. Now, the question is really going to be, how are we going to deal with it? Like, are we going to set up our policies to fix this down the road? And as you're going to hear shortly, I don't think so. In fact, I think we're going to make things worse. But we also have seen a preference from tenants, maybe your landlord, and you've seen this as well. The time spent cooped up inside led to increased desire for larger floor plans and access to green space. While the benefits and glamour of city living were long sought after, the limitations of a city lifestyle were quickly realized during the pandemic. People want to get outside. They want to leave their Toronto caves. That's why we call it density. I like that one. That's a classic dad joke right there. That is. All right. Now, I want to talk about low interest rates messing with the rental demand. So remember how we talked about in this Remax article, and in fact, I think this might even still be the same article. Actually, no, I think this is BlogTO. Anyways, if we're going to say affordability is the issue, well, then explain this point to me. The Bank of Canada slashes benchmark interest rate to 0.25. Great news for those looking to jump into the housing market. Renters who have been sidelined pre-pandemic due to expensive housing may now be able to borrow money at a reduced rate. Those move-up buyers can be another factor explaining lower demand for rental units and the resulting downward trend in rental rates. So here's the argument. People who are in rentals are now able to afford a house. People who would have rented are able to afford a house, all thanks to lower interest rates. This is the exact opposite of a prediction that employment is messing things up for rental real estate. Is it not? The only way that this concept, this philosophy, which I think is true, works and it can stand on its own is assuming that we have a healthy market. Because people are opting to purchase a property at a time when they couldn't have before, but now it's like, this is great, let's do it. And I believe that this scenario is actually the case. I don't think people are not renting because of lack of affordability. In some cases, obviously there's exceptions to the rules, but generally I think they're competing. Once renters are now competing for the properties with the landlords, which if affordability in housing is the ultimate goal, the ability to get people into their own properties, then we're doing a good job. The pandemic might have single-handedly solved that problem. All right. The buyers are buying. Their preferences have just changed. Interest rates are so low, they're skipping the condo entry point and going straight to low rise. The Star article continues. Another incentive for renters is the provincial bill that freezes rent increases between January 1, 2021 and December 31st, 2021, coming to a city near you very soon. In addition, rent for all condos and buildings first occupied on or before November 15th, 2018 fall under the provincial rent guidelines. All of these things, these rent caps, they're putting so much pressure on small landlords. It's going, I'm telling you what I think because I gotta be careful with giving advice, but this all to me says the writing is on the wall. The cave painting is on the wall. I think what's going to happen here is we are pushing so many small renters out of the community. Mind you, we see so many big guys. The big boys are moving in. There's this wealth exchange that's happening because there's going to be tremendous opportunities. There's going to be such a squeeze for rental space down the road. They say, for example, if a renter moves into a ladder type of condo and pays $2,000 for a unit, then previously rented for $2,500, rent will be frozen in 2021. And going forward, the landlord will be stuck with $2,000 rent according to their annual guideline. Now, obviously, some landlords have no choice and they're taking the haircut because why would you want to lose 3 or 4 months? You're going to end up paying for that anyways. But here they give the rental search tips. Some of the tips for you tenants out there. You probably listen to this podcast. You're like, this is great. Woo! For now. Enjoy. Actually, the perfect scenario would be you graduated school. Now you're kind of working somewhere. You know, you've got your own little unit. You can rent something for dirt cheap, save some money. And before hopefully all these prices take off in the condo space, you can snatch something for yourself. That would be a wonderful scenario if I were to dream. But determine if the building falls under provincial rent guidelines. A good consideration if you're a tenant. Have your paperwork in order to view before you view the condos. Don't be afraid to negotiate or ask for incentives. Interesting, they're telling renters this. Ascertain your potential landlord's plan for the unit. Expect better deals away from the major transit lines. Choose a condo on a lower floor to avoid elevator wait times. These are just some tips. These are the things that they're telling the tenants to do before they go out and find that rental unit. And so I just want to briefly talk about some of the things our listeners, we got a lot of smart people that follow us on our podcast. Thank you. Hyman Sahak. Thank you for your comment. I just can't comprehend how homes are selling for 12 times gross household income. When my dad bought his house in 1984, it was 3 times gross household income between him and my mom. But I'll bet you they probably thought it was crazy then too. A middle-class family today like us back then would be paying 4 times more relatively for the same house. That's insane. I agree. People in the GTA are in fantasy land and they are working their behinds off to pay the mortgage, taxes, electric, insurance, maintenance, parties, etc. Parties. You got to pay for those parties. Right? I don't know if that's what he meant, but anyways. And have nothing left for savings. The pie in the face is coming soon to a theater near you. That's one view. Here's the other view. Billy Miner, thank you for your comment. I like the show. Good energy. Oh, thank you. Moving on. Moving on. I'm glad that the housing market continues to show stability. Those that got out and are on the fence hoping for a drop, too bad. Don't bet against this market. Interesting. Very different schools of thought. And I got a comment from Baseline. Thank you. Where will the freehold market be next spring? Because we talked about condos. I want to talk a little bit about freehold as well. Here's the answer. Up. I personally am hoping we see a slowdown, even in the low rise, all the way through. We need to see seasonal slowdowns. That is more normal. That's how things should be. And as an investor, I like predictability. A predictable spring would be seasonal increases in prices and no further lockdowns, shutdowns, which I think is becoming less and less likely. You'll hear in some of our hot topics today. Okay. So demand for delayed spring market has continued through the third quarter. That is the short of it. Okay. I want to move on. We talk a lot about condos lately. I don't even like buying condos. I'm not even a condo purchaser personally. I like multifamily. I like cash flow, but everything is about condos. And so that's why we start there. But we're going to start to transition into policy. These things, by the way, is not just a Toronto thing. Now think bigger. Think bigger. We're going to include Ontario because the Ontario Real Estate Association is putting forward a plan. The history of real estate has come a long way, from the plains of Africa to a municipal land transfer tax. Actually, humankind has come a long way in general. In the caveman days, people used to communicate by writing on walls. Actually, we still do that. All right, so real estate lobbyists are pushing to cut the land transfer tax, according to a NowToronto.com. I'll tell you one thing. They really shouldn't have interviewed NowToronto.com because this paints a really bad picture for the plans coming from OREA, which is a breath of fresh air because coming from someone in the real estate industry, everyone seems to be all very much, hoorah, yeah, OREA, they're lobbyists, because this lobbyist group is funded by me against my will. I have no choice. It's part of the deal. But then they say this, developers want to import a U.S. tax break called opportunity zones to Ontario. hold that thought because we're going to talk about opportunity zones very soon. Okay, we're going to talk about that. We're not going to start here. We're going to talk about first, this topic is about land transfer tax. Ontario land transfer tax, municipal land transfer tax. They want the Doug Ford government to give homebuyers a 6-month holiday. Not waive it, give them a holiday. Here in Ontario, we definitely need a holiday. These borders being locked up like this, along with other incentives it argues will stimulate Ontario's economy during COVID-19 crisis. Why do we need to remove or give a holiday? Why? Because we need to stimulate everything else. It comes on this concept that real estate is the engine that gets everything else turning at any cost. If it means the price of your property goes up double digits for the next 5 years, who cares? At least you can build a house. At least you have a job. At least you can furnish that property. Like, what are the opportunity costs? Completely ignored, in my opinion. I think it's a bad idea, and I've said it repeatedly that we don't need to tack on another demand pressure. And then, in the meantime, talk about a supply issue. So here's what they say. In the last economic downturn, this is Tim Hudak, the CEO of OREA. In the last economic downturn it was real estate that helped keep Ontario's head above water. Of course. And that will still be the case, by the way. Our national association estimates that for every home bought, there are about $90,000 in spin-off expenditure. So just buy $1.5 million house in Toronto, and guess what? We're going to make $90,000 in income. Talk about 12 times, right? No, like that. Obviously, this. Do we have our numbers off? Like, this seems crazy. That could include spending on furniture, appliances, renovation projects, moving, and the list goes on and on. But now Toronto bravely left a counterpoint here, and I think this is where the story goes. Listen to this. Parkdale High Park City Councillor Gord Perks isn't buying it and calls the proposition a disingenuous cash grab that takes advantage of COVID-19 fears. Wait a minute. The Ontario Real Estate Association will be protecting consumers is trying to get a cash grab? That doesn't make sense. That can't be what's happening here. Well, Tim Hudak is paid by a bunch of people who get rich off land speculation, Perks says. He explains that the OREA's proposals are meant to help turn a bigger profit for billionaire investment portfolios hovering over real estate in Toronto, the Golden Horseshoe in areas like Owen Sound or OREA. Once you start hearing about the way that we're kind of doing this zoning stuff and the way that the municipal land transfer tax would be waived in Toronto, there's definitely, you can start to see an unfair advantage to the city versus the outskirt communities. But you guys believe the suburbs are going to take off forever anyway, so I don't think that's an issue. What he's doing here is helping rich people get richer by destroying their quality of life for people who live in Ontario. And I am all for business. I'm a very conservative guy, but I agree. I think this is crazy. Like, I do think we should see price appreciation, but I still want to generate a cash flow. So can we get this at a right pace here? So why? Why is this tramping on some people and successful for other investors? Preferential treatment towards Toronto. Now, that said, the city shouldn't have a municipal land transfer tax, in my opinion, in the first place. We'll talk about the history of that in just a second. In their report, Rebuilding Ontario Framework for Recovery, the OREA makes 15 recommendations. Here's some. Including a time-limited municipal grant to fund planning and development staff. The goal is to expedite approval timelines for building under construction. This is good. I like this one. Boom. Good idea. I would have been okay if we just had 2 or 3 recommendations. We don't need to blow a hole. We don't need to make the list like have 15, but because then you start throwing stuff in like this. They call on the government to bring back a home renovation tax credit. That's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. There's already enough competition in the renovation industry. Anyone who's done any BRRRR strategy, fixer flips, or anybody that's dealt with contractor, forget material costs. It's already expensive. We don't need that level of competition. Just chill, homie. They hope the Ontario government can incorporate the recommendations in the November economic update or the spring budget report. And apparently this is what I want too, because I'm a member. All right. When they wrote some of these, I don't know what they were smoking. I'm going to calm down. Right? Let the Stone Age begin. Actually, I saw another really funny joke as I was preparing this. I might as well tack it in here too. This idea, you're smoking weed to caveman. It's like, I'm a caveman. Didn't make the cut, but apparently made the cut. So what a land transfer tax holiday would mean. Here's the history, guys. After Ontario empowered City Hall with new revenue tools in the City of Toronto's Act in 2007, former Mayor David Miller introduced Toronto's land transfer tax and the vehicle registration tax among revenue options that were being researched at the time. Perks says that, quote, emerged as cheap to administer, fair, and worth doing. Okay. Let me ask you guys, do you believe that that's fair? The OREA wants a 6-month Ontario and Toronto land transfer tax holiday on the home's first $600,000. So not everybody, just the first $600,000. And it also recommends the land transfer tax rebate for first-time homebuyers be increased from $4,000 to $6,000. That's very nice of you to choose who wins in our market. In this case, the first-time homebuyers. And I'm sure if you ask the first-time homebuyers that are trying to enter the market, that extra $2,000 is going to save the day. According to Altus Consulting Group, these changes would add more than, they say, 32,000 homes to the Ontario real estate market supply. I'm not convinced that increasing buyer incentives will help supply. That's me. You might have new homes come on the market, but their reasons for doing it would be to buy something else. So if you own something and you're like, I now have an opportunity where I can kind of delay that land transfer tax, I'm going to move. This is a good chance to move. I've now opened up supply. But in that case, I'm going to be buying something else. It's not like I'm leaving. I'm taking advantage of a land transfer tax, which means I'm purchasing something which didn't really help housing. So the only winners, if you think it through, as I have, which, I mean, is probably flawed because everything I say is flawed, yet you continue to listen to our podcast. If anything, why would you sell when you're expecting thousands of more buyers to enter your market? Like, why would you even sell? Because now you just incentivize it. Ooh, there's going to be this huge psychological, this is going to make things go crazy. And with that thinking in mind, it will, and I want to hold my property. So the only ones that will benefit are the builders and the homeowners, the people already in. Enjoy your $2,000 land transfer or your credit there, first-time buyers. Oh, these plans, man, I'll tell you. When more homes are purchased, that means that more jobs are created, not only in real estate, but also in the broader economy. If that's your goal, then they're saying that's the goal. I think that there's some thinking to that, but I just don't think the numbers work. I think we're way overshooting. And I think affordability is a bigger issue than stimulating our economy right now. I think our economy is doing just fine. I think we've spent enough. I agree the LTT is dumb. However, is this the time we need to be driving prices to new levels? I don't like that there's a municipal land transfer tax, but that said, we can't afford to get rid of it. And the writer even knows it. I wonder whether in the Toronto real estate market, a tax break would only fuel house prices to rise even further. It's not just me saying that. Incentives like plunging mortgage rates tend to encourage buyers to spend more, making the Toronto real estate market scalding hot. Whew. Speaking of scalding hot, I'm going to install a fan in here. I'll get it so it's touching the mic so you guys can feel it through the microphone. Oh, not to mention the pressure this will put on Toronto. The city of Toronto relies on the land transfer tax. So now that we've got it, we depend on that. In fact, we're facing this year a shortfall of $1.3 billion. This sounds like a great time to cut that budget. Mayor John Tory's press secretary points out in a statement to now that the city is also facing a projected $1.5 billion shortfall next year. Guys, we can't afford to do this. We literally cannot afford to do this on a municipal level. And so they deflect and they say, oh, they're just planning on doing it on the Ontario level, even though that's not what they said. And the OREA proposal seems focused on the provincial land transfer tax because we know we can't do anything with the municipal tax. At the end of the day, we got to balance this budget. And what happens when you got to balance the budget? Either we need to get the money from somewhere else or we got to cut spending. And I think we've trimmed the fat enough with COVID. Wouldn't you agree? Woo. All right. I got to move on. I'm really killing myself here. I'm going to die on stage. Now our views would go up super high. Realtor dies on stage. All right, I'm just going to skip this. You know what? Just read an article about a frozen caveman. This is my hot topic. So we're going to cool things down. This is my hot topic. There's an article in the Swedish newspaper that says, frozen caveman found accidentally by hikers in the Himalayas. They found Himalayan in the ice. Okay, so I'm going to just chill. That was fake news. See, here in the fake news, I tell you it's fake news. This is the difference. This is why this is not the news. Note, here comes fake news. Disclaimer, fake news. All right. A couple more hot topics here. These are real ones. Toronto's first modular housing facility takes key step towards occupancy. Out in Scarborough, they've just taken one step closer to opening occupancy for the first of the homes were installed by cranes this week. You can check it out, see some of the pictures. Kind of cool. The city's implementation plan was for 250 modular supportive homes approved by council at the end of April. Look at how fast this turned around. We say we're going to approve this in April. All of a sudden, we've got news in September. The federal government's going to support it. And bam, within a month or two, we've got these things developed. Apparently, it's a very quick way to put people in housing. right? Because there was $1 billion to modular housing across the country announced from Toronto Story's article on September 22nd. And this was through the RHI, the newest incentive in the National Housing Strategy. It's expected to enable the rapid creation of up to 3,000 new affordable housing units across the country. In other words, expect to see more of these. This is just a precursor to a lot more to come. BlogTO had an article. These Toronto neighborhoods still have median house prices of less than $1 million. I think these articles, I just put this in there because I think it's funny. Listen to this. Only 9 of the city's 35 official MLS neighborhoods currently boast a median house price of less than 7 figures. In stark contrast to last year where we had 14 of them. That was literally why I wanted to tell you. But if you want to see if your area has less than $1 million, naturally you'd think those areas would go up, especially when we start talking about these preferred zoning things we'll get to in a minute. But if you want to check out your area, you can go over to a Zoocast or BlogTO article to see that. I also find it concerning. That would be actually more of a resident, a love for our city to say concerned. I'm a concerned citizen. Why is it that the concerned citizens are always a bunch of Karens that are just like, hey, they're not allowed to build behind my backyard. I'm going to report you. Anyways, that's the concerned citizen. That's my mind of a concerned citizen. Probably inaccurate. Why one Ontario region is fighting against potential stage 2 restrictions. Doug Ford's got this big shotgun. He's just standing there. He's like, you're closing. Or he doesn't do it like that. He says, he cocks it first. He's like, okay, you're going to be next. And then like a date. It's like, oh, okay, well, now we got Halton on the table. They're one of only 2 areas that haven't left or entered into stage 2. Now they're writing letters, including the mayor of Burlington and some conservative MPPs. This is his own team saying, dude, don't pull the trigger. He's just like, anyways, there's going to be an announcement tomorrow. Apparently, Doug Ford's going to say something. Let's see if he listens. We will see. How trigger happy is this man? It should be interesting politically, if anything. And then a couple other things. I thought there's a program. This is worth announcing once again. I mentioned it a couple days back. Mortgage rates may rise as Bank of Canada ends emergency pandemic program. I love hearing what I've already told you a few days ago because it just kind of reminds me why I can do this. And it's hopefully encouraging to you guys to hear you're getting the news early. Well, tomorrow, this bond buying program is going to end. And here's what this article from Financial Post reads. What's more likely, mortgage experts say, is the central bank decision to stop buying Canada mortgage bonds will usher in a period of stability. Rates won't get higher, but they won't go lower either. I do think they could go higher. In fact, I think the title, mortgage rates may rise as the Bank of Canada, it literally goes against that. The point here is interest rates aren't going to keep dropping, which is what we said a few days back. And that's reaffirmed here. The Bank of Canada no longer needs to play superhero buying these bond buying programs, purchasing them all up to keeping interest rates competitive, right? You don't need to be a superhero. That or Batman just ran off to his Batcave. He had to go to the Bat Room. Financial Post also had another article. Banking Watchdog says no plans to bring banks special treatment for deferred loans despite second wave. So that mortgage deferral that you guys took advantage of, because we all know you didn't actually need it. You just did it because why not? I'm going to save my payments for the next 6 months and it's going to cost me nothing except a little bit later on. But what do I care if I pay that down? Right? Well, this article pretty much goes on to say that there's no mortgage deferrals in the cards right now. Could things change? Yes, they absolutely could. Some things in life can change. And that's one of them. But actually, I'm not going to get into any kind of, let's not go controversial. Boys and girls. All right. Our area opportunity zone tax breaks coming to our market. Opportunity zones in Ontario. This is our third and final topic. Also part of that other article that we had from Now Toronto. But this was just so juicy that this is a whole new topic. And one that you may have not heard of. We did talk about this actually in our podcast very quickly a few weeks ago, probably. Opportunity zones in Ontario. The OREA wants to bring a tax break called opportunity zones to Ontario. The practice involves identifying areas with high rates of poverty or at-risk populations, and then luring investments to those areas. That's the philosophy. We're going to find the areas that need development. We're going to give them preferential tax treatment, and then we're going to fix it. That's going to fix the problem. Here's the plan. We tell everyone that poor communities are filled with gold. Then, when the cave collapses, it's just called a minor inconvenience. It's one of the rare things they say that Democrats and Republicans both agree on. You guys know the controversy that's happening down in the U.S. Well, this is one of the things they agree on, so we should too. Well, yeah, of course they both agree on in the States because the Republican Party in the States is just a camouflaged Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party is a socialist party. So yeah, they both agree on it. Why not? And it's also tax benefits to the rich, right? Like that also kind of helps a Republican agreeing to that. Here's how it works. Tell me if you think renters or lower class will benefit. A New York Times report describes opportunity zones as, quote, a once-in-a-generation bonanza for elite investors. The tax break allows investors to delay paying capital gains tax, these are some of the perks, on stocks and other investments as long as they spend the money on government-certified opportunity zones. So as long as you're investing in this area right here, you're going to get all of these benefits. Like, where are you going to invest? Right? They can then avoid paying federal tax on development projects like luxury apartment buildings and hotels. So let's get some luxury apartments and hotels in some of these high risk, low income areas, right? Would this help? In my mind, it helps the area, it helps the physical area, but it screws the lower class. That's my thinking. Think of your own thoughts. Let's put on my investor hat. So I want to look at it now from an investor perspective. Critics say the, quote, high-risk communities see little benefit while investors see huge returns. Okay, listening. In Toronto, an opportunity zone sounds like areas like Regent Park or Villaways, areas that shift out residents living in public housing to make way for condos serving a new community. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Let's be honest. Perks believes that land speculation will have a hand in deciding what areas in Ontario should be classified as opportunity zones. So we're going to choose who wins. And then we're going to flood the market with a bunch of investors and with collateral damage on whoever's there before. That's literally what I hear. I might be completely off base, but that's literally what I hear. Go dig it out, and who cares what the consequences are for the people who live there. So here's OREA's angle. Here's the reason why this is a recommendation from the Ontario Real Estate Association. No small organization. The ones protecting the consumer and the lobby group on behalf of real estate professionals. This is really a job creation initiative. It's focused on helping existing businesses there grow and new businesses to invest and put people on payroll. And obviously there's spin-off on the housing side. We just so happen, we're only called the Ontario Real Estate Association. We're trying to help the jobs. And if we happen to get some kind of profit or return for our investors, well, we weren't really thinking about that anyways. That's a coincidence. But you need to make sure there's affordable housing when developing those areas. And are we not doing that with some of the things we talked about earlier? Anyways, in my opinion, I'm all for property value increases. I am. But I think, in my opinion, this is getting out of hand. But go ahead. Tell us that there's a gold mine in Regent Park and I'll grab a pickaxe, right? And that's the way investors are going to treat it. If we drive investors and developers to these forgotten zones, it'll be the worst day of the locals' lives, in my opinion. Like a bat, like, what does a bat sound like? I don't know. What's a bat sound? I can't do no echolocation up in here. Okay. Like a bat, these changes will flip things upside down and become a terrible experience. That said, worse things have happened for bats. Like the day they got diarrhea. But remember, as we're looking for properties, all you investors out there are 3 things every bat should consider before moving into a new cave. Echolocation, echolocation, echolocation. I had some fun today. I know you guys did. And I know I'm opinionated. I know it can get loud and a little bit crazy sometimes, but we have some fun. And we're here to support you guys in any way as you're out there searching for investments. You're hoping to grow your portfolio. Hit us up with a message. Make sure you subscribe, like our channel, whatever it takes. And I will see you guys next time with more. Take care and keep it real.